What's up, hobby friends? My name is Casey, and welcome to another Miniature Rescue. This week, we're going to unpack a super awesome out-of-print box from old-timey Necromunda. This video is sponsored by Fume. Sometime last year, I found an awesome listing for an old and out-of-print Necromunda game on Facebook Marketplace. I drove to that old lady's house and snagged a not quite complete box of that game. And I'm very glad that I did too, because there were tons of great things inside the box. The minis, the books, and the character sheets left over from the original owners. So many good things inside of one box. Ever since working on that project and getting that game up and running, I've been wanting to expand that collection and make more videos showing what the old days of tabletop games were like. But until now, I haven't really taken that leap. Luckily, a fantastic subscriber named Brian sent me some awesome old minis made specifically for this game. These models are pretty old. The box says 1995, and the original price in the United States was $24.99. It's pretty expensive even by 1995 standards, and accounting for inflation, that would make this box nearly $50 today, which is actually about what you would pay, so not terribly different from back then to now. Kind of interesting. It also says right on the box that these models were sculpted by Gary Morley, who is an absolute legend in this hobby. He has sculpted some incredible miniatures over the years, love him or hate him. I've painted a few, and have a few more in my collection, but of course, we are taking a look at these sweet Van Saar Necromunda minis today. According to Brian, who sent these in, his minis have been sitting in this box for more than 25 years, tucked away in a drawer, just hanging out, waiting for their chance to see some gameplay. I think it's the perfect time that they get a little bit of attention and a nice bit of paint to get them back onto the table. First things first though, we need to clean off the minis and get them ready for paint. And in order to do that, they will be getting a bath in my Sonic jewelry cleaner filled with LA's Totally Awesome. I just want to make sure that the models, even though they look pretty good right now with a tiny bit of paint on them, are cleaned of any mold lines and dust that we might not be able to see right now. I've definitely had issues with that in the past. So cleaning them up will just reset everything and give us the freshest start that we can get. Before that though, let me tell you about today's excellent sponsor. Cold turkey may be great on sandwiches, but there's a better way to break your bad habits. We're not talking about using some magic liquid that makes you a world-class painter. No oil. We're talking about our sponsor, Fume, and they look at the problem in a different way. Not everything in a bad habit is wrong. So instead of a drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from your habit? Fume is an innovative, award-winning flavored air device that does just that. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses all-natural, delicious flavors. You get it. Instead of bad, Fume is good. And it's a habit you're free to enjoy and make replacing your bad habit easy. It fills the void in a natural, guilt-free way. Your Fume comes with an adjustable airflow dial and is designed with movable parts and magnets for fidgeting, giving your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for de-stressing while breaking your habit. Base was launched in January. It's a weighted stand to rest your Fume on when not in use, with a magnet inside that keeps your Fume attached. The Fume device can be spun around on it, which is also good for fidgeting. Personally, I was surprised by how much the clicking and spinning and popping of the metal parts actually, helped me calm down and focus on what I was doing. It's very satisfying to hold and feel the weight of in your hand while you're doing other things. Stopping is something that we all put off because it's hard, but switching to Fume is easy, enjoyable, and even fun. Fume has served over 150,000 customers and has thousands of success stories. There's no reason that can't be you. Join Fume in accelerating humanity's breakup from destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Head to tryfume.com/ebayminiature or scan the QR code and use code ebayminiature to get 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today. That's tryfum.com and use code ebayminiature to save an additional 10% off your order today. A huge thank you to Fume for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to those teeny tiny old-timey minis. The The minis come out of the sonic cleaner and look pretty good. A little scrubbing to get that old paint off, and we can start to sand down any mold lines and cut away any excess metal flashing that might be left over on the models. I also really want to put them onto nicer bases. Slots are great for stability long term, but I'm not planning on taking these out of this room, so to speak. More than likely, anyway, they are going to stay with this game and be used when people come over to play this game. So I decided to snip them off their slotters and put them onto these nifty base toppers I found from Vinci Miniatures on my mini factory. Base toppers are a quick print, great way to get some good detail on a base rather quickly. I've been using them for a while now, and I'm usually pretty happy with how they turn out, and these are no exception. They work great, have a good amount of detail, and honestly look remarkably close to their modern pre-sculpted counterpart from the plastic re-release of this exact box. So it fits very well with the gang and the theme of the game. After getting all these guys cleaned up and glued down to their new bases, it's time to get the primer out and start painting. The box for these has a little bit of directions for painting, but it's pretty limited and uses the names of paints that honestly haven't been around for almost as long as these minis have. So it's mostly useless at this point. Still, this box just keeps on giving. There's just a ton of little bits of information, fun things on it, much cooler than boxes we get today. The box in itself is a collectible at this point. I ended up deciding on a brighter version of the box art. I like the green armor, but I want to go a little bit higher with that, so I'm going to start with a darker camo green as a base coat over the black primer. Once that gets covered, I'll switch to a mid-tone jungly green that is decently bright, and finally finish off the brightest highlights with an almost off-white green. This light green will desaturate the whole thing, but we still have gradients underneath that can be brought out by saturating all of that color again and taking advantage of that brighter white on the top. Here's what I mean. Specifically using a contrast paint called Tesseract Glow, which is pretty bright and green-yellow. I'm going to lightly go over the entire model. This will bring out those super bright highlights on top and saturate the colors over the rest of the model. Just brings all the colors together and makes them nice and bright. Once the main suit color is taken care of, we can start to fill in the smaller details. I like to use a nice dark silver for all the metallic bits, which there are quite a few all over each model. Lots of little tubes and boxes and metal rings at the end of leather straps. Actually reminds me a lot of the suits from Dune. Yeah. Speaking of leather straps, I like to start with a darker purple brown for the leather, and even more so in this case because it works really well with the bright greens. And I follow that up with scratchy highlights of orange brown and tan skin tone. For the skin, I went with the tan flesh color as a base coat and let it dry for quite a while before moving on. The armor, even with the other items being base coated, still needs a little bit more separation. So I grabbed my favorite bright yellow green and edge highlighted the armor panels. The bright yellow green is just a little bit above the Tesseract Glow in terms of color saturation and brightness, so it mixes in really well and still gives a nice defined line. So it worked out really well. Models get a mix of brown and black hair, and that will vary even more as we put highlights on later, but a simple base coat for now will do. Honestly, I kind of struggled with the faces on these guys. The details on a few of them stand out nicely, and you can easily see where things are supposed to go, but some of them are kind of squishy. Something that is kind of hard to avoid with a lot of these older models like this. And these in particular are a little more squishy than I've seen. So I ended up opting for a wash to get the color right, especially the darker color in the eyes, doing a little bit of layering on the skin and just getting them pretty much table ready. Some of them ended up looking pretty good, but there are definitely some of these minis that don't exactly see eye to eye. It's not really a big deal, but you know. The last thing I wanted to do with these guys was introduce a black oil wash. A little bit of oil wash all over will blackline a lot of that detail and really make each piece of the model stand out. And being that this is an oil wash, I can come back in after it's dry and just remove any of the wash that I don't want. It really does make a big difference on these guys. The bright green next to the black line really pops, and I'm honestly pretty happy with the way that turned out. Necromunda is one of those older Games Workshop games that just stands out so much. The way that the game looks, the types of kits that were made, all still hold up really well today. I mean, they're still making the game, technically. But some of the coolest models and terrain came out of this specific game. And so much of that aesthetic is carried over into the modern counterparts. It's also exciting to see that even with the newest version of this game, I could still use these exact models if I wanted. The gang still exists, and there are updated modern rules. Now, obviously the modeling might be a little different, size, bases, and that kind of thing, but it's still viable. The goal will be to eventually do that, but for now, I'm going to get these guys in the case and have them ready for an old school game of Necromunda 95. A massive thank you to Brian for sending these models in. It's always so great to see things like this and just share them with everyone, so I appreciate that you would ship these out to me. Thank you again for joining me on another miniature rescue. If you like something about this video, please consider hitting that like button, sharing this message with your hobby friends, and of course, subscribing for more miniature rescues. Once again, I'm Casey, and I will see you in the next video. And here are the final shots of those Van Saar Necromunda 95 minis. Thanks again.